You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Tony Walker.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me on.
Tony, please inform everyone out here listening a little bit about yourself and what do you do professionally?
Okay. So for a living, I am a psychiatric nurse, and I work at the moment in England with actually suicidal kids. So that's what I do day in, day out, which isn't as depressing as it sounds, actually, because a lot of the kids are really cool and really nice. I really like them. So, you can have a lot of fun, and that sounds really weird. And I think you can be helpful as well, and you can help move them on.
Well, hey, man, that's awesome, because for me, I was bullied through school. So I wanted to do social work, where I ended up, there's a giant opioid addiction in my area. So I started doing chemical dependency.
Right.
And then I kind of branched off from there into psychology. I found myself fascinated with the human mind. So I started looking at, there's a lot of kids experiencing a lot of like tragedy. And you're now seeing anxiety hit kids at levels of 8 years old, 12 years old, such young ages where they go to their parents, they go to their grandparents, and they say, I have severe anxiety. And what's the first thing an adult's going to do as soon as a little kid tells them that?
Well, I don't know if they take it seriously. Because I've worked all ages in mental health, and I've worked with older adults, I've worked with working age adults, and I've been doing this so we go right down to however young you want. But in reality, I guess we see people, 11 would be the youngest, but the bulk of them are going to be teenagers. But yeah, you see 11-year-old kids going to their parents saying they want to die, and you're just like, how on earth do they even get that idea?
They don't even you're like, you don't take them seriously, because like you don't know what depression is. Okay, you've never worked a day in your life, and you'll hear like responses like that, and I'm like, are you understanding the impacts of social media, how that's turned bullying into a whole new form? I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was in school, when I got my ass kicked, or, something happened where, I got in something with a bully, it didn't go outside of school.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is now. And I'm an older guy now, obviously, but we didn't have things like that. When you went home from school, that was that. It didn't matter if you're having a bad time, if somebody was going to, as you say, going to give you a kick in at school, you went home and you were fine, But now they're sitting up on their phones at 2 a.m. in the morning, and they're being continually bullied throughout. And it's almost like, you're like, well, why don't you just not go on Snapchat? Why don't you just not go on Instagram? But there's some kind of social compulsion for them to be part of that,
It's literally part of their routine. The first thing you do probably in the morning, just like myself, is check your phone.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, now.
How can they, a kid like kind of back away from bullying, or kind of pull that out of his life, isolate that somewhere, when they check their phone in the morning and they're tagged in a bunch of posts where their face is photoshopped onto, an out of shape person's body, or they're getting made fun of, and all you're seeing is Facebook posts like, hey, did you know this kid sucks? And that kid's just like, wow, like,
you're right.
They get angry, but there's nothing they can do, because, a lot of people don't realize you could take the post down, but it's still up there. Like, it's going to be, they can add you to a timeline. They can do so many different things that I think a lot of people, like adults, don't really understand the grasp of social media now.
They're really cunning the way they do it. And I remember there was one girl there was a video made of her being beaten up on a school bus. And, she's just lying on the ground. All these kids are kicking it. And that exists now. And they keep reposting it year after year. It's about 3 or 4 years ago now. I had another one where, and obviously I'm not going to identify any people, and you don't know exactly where I work and whatever. But so this young man was 17. He'd had a lot of bullying all his life, just about nothing really, just ridiculous things. He was tall and thin, and that was that. But he moved schools because of it. Moved to a new school. Somehow, the old school people from the old school found out. They told the new school. Next thing, they actually were so wicked. They told the teachers and things that he was going to kill himself, and he had those thoughts in the past, but he was doing better. And then he gets off the school bus on his way home, thinks, "Oh God, I don't know what I'm going to do." Sits on a bridge, and people are videoing him on the phones and doing Facebook Live and stuff. And it's just unbelievable.
It's crazy because just recently an old video resurfaced that I used to watch as a kid, because this is when World Star Hip Hop came out. So it's like fight videos. Okay. That's how I basically spent my junior and senior year, was watching fight videos on YouTube, because they gave us a class with computers in front of us. And I'm a kid, so I'm like, oh, I want to see, something like that. And then I ended up kind of watching more of like MMA and UFC. And then, but watching these like stuff, it was a girl named Sharkeisha. I remember that specifically. Said Sharkeisha, and in the video she goes, "Sharkeisha, no, don't kick her." And then all you see is this girl's foot just kick this girl straight in the face, like punching her in the face, like if you're hitting a soccer ball. Got millions of views, and that girl probably felt like crap. Not the one that was hitting the other one, but the one that was getting hit.
Yeah, it's how we could talk about the darkness of human nature. I remember, this must be a while ago now. It was probably 15 years ago, maybe more. And I got addicted to an online MMO, but it was text only. And it was this, player kill world. So you develop your skills, and people go around killing other players, and you could rob them. You could really make their lives miserable. You could bully them online in these games. And not everybody would do it, but certain people, because there was no law, there was no penalty for them being horrible to people, they would just make people's lives a misery. And that was a real insight. I thought, is this what the world would be like if we didn't have any laws?
That's what they call trolls nowadays. It's not the little thing that hides under the bridge, but it's the person that goes online just looking to anger somebody, hacks their account, makes them lose everything, or, just makes fun of them and does something just to be stupid and mindless, because they get a sense out of it. It's weird because we used to watch videos of people getting hurt accidentally. Like a child goes to swing a baseball bat and it misses and hits the dad in the nuts. Everyone laughed at that. It was funny to watch people get hurt. But then people, somewhere along the way, it turned into a new form where people liked seeing other people hurt other people. It's a little bit different when someone hurts themselves in a dumb way, like he's on a ladder and then misses a step and falls. Self-harm kind of. But now you're seeing it turn in a little bit where now it's scaring people, because the way self-harming is now is a kid hurting himself, such as cutting himself. I remember this moment. I'm going to be a little honest here. So back in, I think it was 8th grade or 7th grade. No, it was 8th grade. We had this new kid come to our school about halfway towards the end of the year. So that's like a really rough time because everyone already knows each other. And he came from a whole different place. He came from, I think, Wisconsin or Michigan. And we're in Ocean City, Maryland. So that's a big Midwest change all the way to the East Coast. So it's a completely different vibe. And I remember he would brag, like, we're kids, we're 14, 15. So he would brag a lot. And I remember he tried to come into school and he brought a bag of grass, a legit bag of grass. Like, not talking about weed. I'm talking about like lawn clippings. And he started telling everyone it was like some really good marijuana. And I remember immediately everyone was like, kind of like, oh, really? Like, calling him out on it. Yeah. And I remember he got so upset. These kids, like, he ended up throwing it away after lunch and like coming back into class and then tried to forget about it. Like it was something stupid just to get attention. And nobody would let it go. Then after I think it was like the second day we got in there and they all were still kind of like people are snickering, like whispering, gossiping to themselves. A bunch of little girls were. He got up and said, "Can I go to the bathroom?" Went to the bathroom and came back like 5 minutes later. Like his eyes were all kind of watered up, like he just cried. And I was like, damn, I was like, he probably got upset in the bathroom or something, like just had to let it out. So I asked my teacher, "Can I go to the bathroom?" And so I leave when he gets in. I go and I knew he had something in his hand when he walked out. So I went into the bathroom, I looked in the trash can, and there was a note. It's all crumbled up.
Hmm.
So I open it up, and it is just relentless, like a long paragraph of "I fucking hate everyone. I want to like just like
Yeah.
threatening to kill himself, threatening to kill the kids, like
Yeah.
just going like severe anger issues." And I grabbed it and I brought it to my teacher because I was like,
Hmm.
"Hey, there's something wrong. Like he really took this a really different way than I guess what I really understood." And I remember he went to the principal's office and all these things happened, but that's when I started realizing like that's when bullying was like becoming a huge. I mean, we all know like the kids pick on each other and stuff, but after that moment, I started having like a different realization of the words that you can say to someone.
Yeah. I don't think people realize the impact it has on, particularly if you're sensitive, and some people are, and you don't know what's gone on in somebody's background, what's gone on in their home life, if they've moved to a new area, why did they move, what's gone on there, and they could be really fragile. And yeah, bullying's a big thing, and funnily enough, it kind of, and one of the things you find out is that you carry it with you. And somebody who's been bullied at school tends to be bullied at work, and they tend to be, end up, 40 years old, and they're still being bullied by, and maybe even get into a relationship and get bullied by their partner as well.
It's really weird because in psychology, you learn about environmental influences and these types of things that affect you later on in life that somewhere in your developing years really hit you. If you come home and you're around an aggressive household, you tend to take that out towards kids around you in school.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
how does bullying change for you? Like were you bullied in school? Is this why you kind of wanted to dive down the road?
No, I wasn't. I don't remember. I could be the funny kid, so I wasn't the toughest kid in class, but I could always make people laugh. And because I could make them laugh, I never really had any problems. I think the key skill was making allies, and I always had, it sounds bad, but I always had friends so I never really got that. I suppose it's a fair question to say how I ended up going into mental health. Yeah, well, we're talking about some things now. So we're talking about, where I grew up in a pretty rural area in a remote part of England, and back in the day there wasn't a lot of drugs around, and there was just a bit of weed, and people had some amphetamine, stuff like that, and maybe a tiny bit of LSD. Some people some heroin, but that was pretty rare, all of that. And I'm one of these people, so what we say is that most people can smoke marijuana and be fine. Really, 90%, I would say, but 10% have a susceptibility and they'll become psychotic. And I've seen a lot of that. But it's if I was to say it's a majority, it would be a lie because it isn't. But unfortunately,
hey, I'm one of those guys.
Me too. Me too.
I swear to God, every time I've gotten high, I've gotten I gotten too stoned to the point where I threw up. Or
Yeah.
I remember one experience, I was sitting in a car and I thought my balls slipped into my asshole, like got sucked in there. And I explained this and people laugh. I'm like, my mind, I have ADHD, so it's already on a creative spree.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't I've gotten to the point, like I smoked a little bit and I was like, wow, this is nice. I like this. But then I find myself overthinking if I smoke too much.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, when you hit the too much, there is no going back. It's like, oh, you're in it for the fucking ride.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what happened to me. I ended up getting really paranoid. I got to the point where I thought there was a guy lived in the town, and I used to see him, and he was eccentric, and he used to wear black cape, and I got convinced that he was a black magician and he was coming after my soul, So it was a bad time, really. I'm laughing about it now, but it wasn't very nice. So, and then funnily enough, obviously I'm older, I've got kids, and my two daughters now are in the 20s, about your age actually. And both of them separately, one of them went to Amsterdam, and in Amsterdam, this is what you do. And she wasn't experienced with these things, and then got totally paranoid, thinking the people at the next table were going to come and get her, and had to run out the place. The other one, different place, I don't know where she was, in Liverpool, I think, and similar paranoia. So I think there is a genetic, actually, funnily enough, there's schizophrenia in my family as well, on some of the cousins. So, yeah, so I avoid all that stuff. But anyway, it made me very interested in it. And I thought, yeah, this is really interesting. So I got into it, and yeah, I did psychology degree as well at one time, and I don't at the moment. You don't really work with that psychosis side of things. I work with the more emotional stuff. So we see a lot of people
there's
personality disorders and things. Yeah.
They say you can't overdose on weed, but there's a thing known as the green out effect, which is when you smoke too much, your body gets way too high and it doesn't know how to calm down. So someone that is kind of experiencing a lot of anxiety, it can actually worsen your symptoms. There's also a small percentage of the population where they are allergic to the THC effect in marijuana. They get pale, they get cold, they can go unconscious, stuff like a severe allergic reaction. And I say to these, like, a lot of kids, they choose, like, I know I did for my junior and senior year, I was smoking mostly because it was a bonding relationship with my brother, who that's his thing. He writes music and does that. So he loved that because he got a different high than I did. But I find myself being a newbie trying to keep up with him. I ended up getting way too stoned to the point where I don't dive into it now, only on the concept of it's already taken the sunglasses off my eyes. It showed me another kind of reality a little bit, like looking at things in a more texture and more detail, which I am grateful for. But like I said, the overwhelming effects, I got locked in the bathroom for 45 minutes. I was like, I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick, take a pee. Next thing I know, I'm in the bathroom. I'm looking at myself in the mirror. There's a song by Little Dicky called Too High. And it literally explains my whole scenario. Like, got a shit, but the path to the bathroom is complex. And he's sitting on the couch and he's like, I can't get up because there's too much like planning. Like that's perfect. But like when you're developing as a kid, there's so many influences that can go into your life. And where people are going to say, like, how do you not have, like a bullying thing through school, and now you're doing that as your job? See, the thing is, it's like you said, it's not a bad job because you get to help these kids on basically the edge. Like, they're ready to, end it, even though they're looking at the short-term answer. They're not looking at the long-term. Like, what's going to happen is because they think it's going to last the rest of their lives.
Yeah, but you said at the very beginning about when you're 5, you have 5-year-old problems, and they're the biggest problems that you've got in the world. When you're 85, you have 85-year-old problems. They're all different problems for whatever life stage you're at. They're pretty serious. So you can look back at a 15-year-old's going to look back at a 5-year-old and go, what the hell are you worried about? This is nothing. But for them, it really is. And the same thing, what isn't a problem for you now might be when you get older. So it's all relative.
Yeah. And I think, like, a lot of the, I hear, I'm obsessed with mental health. I'm obsessed with the brain in general. But like, I wanted to go and do social work, and I wanted to help kids that were getting bullied, help kids in school, because that's a very strong time and a point in your life. I don't want to say bullying's good, but I don't want to say bullying's entirely bad. There are the way it used to be done, a kid making it can motivate someone to get their life changed. For me, I was picked on for being overweight. I've gone to the gym every single day and worked out every single day for 7 years now. I have not missed one. I hold myself entirely to that because I stay committed to it. But I saw the change in my body, having a 6-pack now, and then somebody who picked on me back in school messaging me because they have a beer gut, and they're like, can you help me? Like, I need help. I'm like, I'm more than willing to help you, because that was something in my life that it was a very struggling time for me, but I took it and went the right route with it. The problem is when it comes to the answer, you don't want to look at the long term. You want to look at what's the quickest way to get out of this. And people's mind immediately goes to, especially when you're depressed, is ending it. Is they don't want it to keep on going on because they think it's never going to end.
So one of the questions we ask is, what is it that you want to end? If we could give you another way of not feeling, is it you don't want to feel this way, or is it you want to be dead? And some people say, oh, I want to be dead. But actually, mostly 95% is actually you just don't want to feel like that. And if there was another way, most people will take that. Because, and then you get quite metaphysical. And I'll say to them, and obviously probably not with an 11-year-old, although I might, is, what do you think? What does death mean to you? What does it mean? And it depends. A lot of kids these days, I would say, our we're a quite atheistic culture, really. Even so, a lot of young people just think they're going to be switched off like a TV.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
with Christianity becoming such a low point now. You see that it's about 45% in America now that are Christians, and the other ones are other religions that fall in. But there's a high majority of the new millennial population that is atheist or doesn't believe in them.
Yeah, they wouldn't probably say they're atheist. It's not like a commitment. It's just that they don't believe in those things. So yeah, and I say, well, that's a bet you're making. That's a wager you're making, really, because you are making a bet that you were going to do this a very serious thing, and then your problems will stop. I said, if we were in India, they'd be saying you're just going to come back, and you're going to have to face the same problems. And if we were like 100 years ago when people were really devoutly Christian, depending on which branch of Christianity, if you do that, you're going to burn, So you better think carefully about this. And what about if there's another way? Why wouldn't you take that if there's a chance? But people get depressed, and one of the features of depression is you cannot see recovery. It's a feature of it.
Well, everyone gets depressed, but the grasp of it, it's like a fucking demon hiding on your back. Like, just do it. Just do it. Just end it. Take that. Just take that drug.
Do you know, a lot of people hear voices, and more people than you think hear voices. I think it's something like 10% of the population. And by and large, that's not schizophrenia. That's not a psychotic. That's only about 1% of the population. So people come, particularly parents will go, my son, whatever, he hears voices. Aren't you really concerned about that? And I go, well, it's a symptom. It's like having a fever. When when you're septic, you have a fever. The voice is a symptom of the state the person is in. And if they feel better, the voice will probably go away. So a lot of these voices are very derogatory and persecutory. And sometimes people can recognize a voice. So I'll say to them, do you know who the voice is? Is it a man or is it a woman? Is it more than one? What age are they? What accent have they got? Are they local to you? Do you know them? And sometimes they know who it is. And these voices continue into adulthood, and they'll say, "It's my dad." And what's your dad saying? He's saying basically what he used to say when I was a kid. I was useless and was never going to make anything of myself, and I might as well just kill myself. So voices are common.
We all have a type of subconscious or a inner self that kind of tells us not to do dumb shit. Mostly like, hey, that's hot. I probably wouldn't want to touch that. But I think Robin Williams, in one of his bits, now that I look at it more closely, he suffered from severe depression. Yes. But he talks about that inner voice. He goes, that inner voice when you look off a bridge and it just tells you in the back of your head, jump. You can fly. Everyone's got something, looking in the mirror, they go, oh, you look like shit. Something like a side quick little thought. That little voice that kind of speaks to you. But I think a lot of people, where we're looking at people that are dreamers, they spend a lot of time in their head constantly. That's not always good, because sometimes you can't break what's thought from reality. And that's when it plays a giant role. As a kid with a large imagination, they can choose to live in their thoughts rather than experience, the reality, because it is a little bit scary. Video games help in that way. It gives you a kind of a sense of relaxation. But a lot of times people get online and, they're having fun, but you're community interaction with still behind a screen. And that's where people get the most balls, I would say. They get all gutsy, they're all like, oh, you suck, your mom sucks, and all this type of stuff. And it just goes down the list. And you find as a kid, you're hearing these things, you take it to heart.
Yeah, people start to wear it, somebody gives you this and you start to own it like it's you. One of the people, of course, there are a group of people who think they're wonderful. We never see them because they're walking around looking in mirrors going, hey, I'm pretty special, we tend to only see the people who have the negative message.
Well, yeah, we live in a world where literally everybody is judging everybody on the basis of their looks or on the basis of what they have. This society, it's an adopted nature, I call it, because we're not meant to live this way. But things like Instagram, things like celebrities, things like this create these idolized people. These people that seem perfect, but they have a lot of flaws because they are human. And I think a lot of people lose that grasp of humanity.
A lot of people, a lot of young people, you say to them, what do you want to do with your life? And they want to be famous. They want to be Instagram famous or a YouTuber. Actually, maybe YouTubers do entertain people. Maybe Instagram people do as well. But, like famous for what? Well, it doesn't matter as long as I'm famous.
They just they don't want to feel loved.
Hey, that's it.
Yeah, we're in a society where we've adopted false communication. We rely on messaging and doing these types of things, and instead of having social interaction anymore through face-to-face contact. Shaking somebody's hand can be easily done with a Snapchat wave, or we're not hanging out anymore. It's a really bad way of problem solving, because we get so depressed, we get comfortable where we don't want to leave the house. How many times after a long day do you just come home and cancel your plans because all you want to do is lie down?
Yeah, it happens. Yeah. Funnily enough, I was talking to the father of one of the kids, and he was saying nobody really these days just kicks back and does nothing. Well, it used to be common. People would just sit and do nothing at all. They wouldn't be watching TV. They wouldn't be on the phones. They just wouldn't be doing anything. And I think that's less and less common now. You're always doing something. It's like ADHD society, really.
Well, we're so used to so many things now, so many screens, everything, you're not just doing one thing anymore. And that really, it's like you're trying to build progress in so many things at once and not putting everything into one thing where you could build it up even faster.
Yeah.
A lot of people want fame. I think that's been recorded throughout history. Someone wants to be remembered through something, because especially nowadays where you're seeing religion, a lot of people are, don't really have a belief in anything. They're afraid of dying and not having another place to go. They're just gone. You know what I mean? So what they're trying to do is they're trying to record themselves into history. They're trying to leave a piece of them behind and trying to live through that way.
I think you put your finger in it when you said people just want to be loved. At the bottom of it, most of the time, most of the people you see, what they want is at the bottom of it. They just want to be loved, and sometimes they are loved. They just struggle to feel loved. But the bodybuilding stuff, we used to see typically young women. You see young guys as well now with anorexia. Thinking they're fat, but they're not, or making themselves sick.
You're talking to someone right now. I have body dysmorphia, man. I look in the mirror to the point where I don't even want to take off my shirt. I have a six pack, but I don't like it because I've been uncomfortable my whole life with my looks. So constantly, I'll eat 3 French fries and I'll go to the gym and burn 1,600 calories.
But the male equivalent of because you think of what the idealized male figure is that society's telling you, got to be big, you got to have the big shoulders, the big pecs, a 6-pack, or else you don't count. And it is like, and for the girls, it's like they've got to be thin, stick thin, be in vogue. And these messages given to people, this is conditional love. Unless you achieve this, you're unlovable. And that people take that really deeply, and it's not true, obviously.
Yeah, because I think, like I said, we live in a world that judges on appearance. We judge on what people have, cars. We judge on, because we live in a world where it seems like it's so easy to get these things. It's so obtainable, but you're being lazy if you can't. There's genetic factors to the point where you can't have a 6-pack. Someone that is a big person, it's probably a high likely possibility it's not in their genetics to get a 6-pack, but doesn't mean they can't get in shape. But that's not what we care about as people. The people nowadays have adopted a mindset to where if you don't look like, Jason Momoa on TV, then you're not important. You're not anything like that. If you don't have an ass like Kim Kardashian or Nicki Minaj, you don't have, you're not worth it as a woman. You need to go to the gym, you need to lose weight. And it puts a lot of struggle, because have you ever seen the models? Like, now we're seeing in society nowadays where it's getting a little bit better with plus size models and these types of comfortability with being yourself, a little bit about, like, it doesn't matter what your size is. You want to be a big chick now. They're going that complete opposite.
I think I forgot what I was going to say. I was going to say something about that. No, I can't remember. Mental blank. It was about, because my phone just went. This is ideally what we're talking about. I thought I switched my phone off, and distractibility and somebody sending me some WhatsApp messages. So, but yeah, people have always judged people by their looks, I guess. even you go back to the earliest movies. But interestingly, you know, when Kirk Douglas took his shirt off, he didn't have a six pack. And I don't think William Shatner had one on the first Star Trek either.
I think
can't
it
remember.
changed when Bruce Lee took off his shirt.
Yeah, Bruce did. Yeah, Bruce did.
When Bruce Lee took off his shirt, it was like, holy shit. Like, that guy doesn't have an ounce of fat on him. And I think more people try to do that. Then you saw Chuck Norris try. I mean, Chuck Norris really didn't have a six pack. He had a hairy ass chest.
Yeah. That's nobody wants those anymore. You know.
You know, back in the day, it wasn't about being, you know, it wasn't about having a six pack or anything. It was about being a man's man. You know, you drove a Silverado truck. You had a giant mustache. You had hair on your shoulders to the point where you looked like you're wearing a sweater. You know, that was the woodsman style. Yeah,
smoke Marlboros. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's true. It's true. Did you see, funnily enough, that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the recent movie with
Brad Pitt?
Brad Pitt, yeah. And of course, Bruce Lee's in that, isn't he? And they're suing him, I think. They're suing Tarantino because they portrayed Bruce Lee in an unfavorable light.
That's the thing though, because that was a really weird kind of change to society too, because when Bruce Lee came out, you know, when his movies came out, kids were freaking out. They loved that's where karate got a big, like, I'm pretty sure every parent was signing up their kid to do karate. You know, they were buying ninja stars. They were doing everything. It was such an influence. And nowadays you're seeing things like, you know, horror movies and these apt movies, like it's just developed into a whole new thing. We live in a horror world, but you know, like you do a podcast on it for sure. I know we went off about like mental health and stuff too, and it all plays into a thing. You do a podcast called Classic Ghost Stories.
Okay. Yeah, I do. So yeah, and I've been trying to work out if there is a connection between the two things. There must be at some level, but I just do this. This is my fun time, really. I do the podcast, I do things that I like and I can relax and chill out with. So basically, it's a podcast, and I decided not to just do it. You know, like audiobooks and there was LibriVox. I don't know if you've heard of that, which is a talking book service, and people recorded classics. And I just wanted to do that and have a different story every week. I've been doing more than once a week. Just your classic ghost stories. It's free, so most of the stuff's out of copyright anyway. But I'm recording some of the classics. There's one called Carmilla, which is the first female vampire story from, I think, about 1910 or so. And I was thinking last night, maybe I should do Dracula as well, because I love Dracula. So I've always had an interest in these things, to the extent of when I got married in my honeymoon, we went to Transylvania and went around which is a beautiful place, absolutely beautiful place. And I've been there twice now, and I've been to Whitby as well, where I'm going there soon. There's a folk horror convention in December. I'm going there too, but that's where Dracula's supposed to have landed from the boat, and been to the graveyard. Anyway, so I'm thinking of reading Dracula, even though it'll probably take me about 2 months to do all it, because it's quite a long book. But yeah, no, it's old style, old school stuff. So it's not so much the
new culture of horror, which I really, really honestly hate. What's really weird is that we started preying upon serial killers and these types of notions instead of building up a story like it did before. We play on quick jump scares. Now, when it comes to serial killers, horror, I think the one thing that fascinates me about it, and that can actually truly scare me, because I really don't get scared over ghosts or anything like that, it's mental health.
Oh.
When that movie The Visit came out, where the kids went to the grandparents' house, and it turns out it wasn't their grandparents at the ending, but the grandma was experiencing sundowning, where she would go around naked and do weird shit around the house. That stuff started freaking me out. Split, for instance, multiple personality syndrome. That's where I'm like, oh shit, because this is a real thing that a lot of, like, I remember in my psychology studies, there was a kid that was only 14 years old that tried to kill his family by setting his house on fire because he suffered from severe schizophrenia, to the point he thought King Tut was outside of his house trying to kill him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the visit, actually talking about that. Do you remember the grandmother underneath the barn or whatever it was?
And
Moving,
fucking
oh
jump
my
like a
God.
spider.
Yeah, that was scary. Yeah. Not much scares me these days, but that scared me. Yeah. That was her
I think
moving
it's
like that.
because mental health is kind of scary in a movie because it's such a real thing. There are people, like for me, my buddy's mom was schizophrenic, ended up taking her own
Mm,
life, but that was an impending thing. Like that was kind of
mm,
nervous. You don't when someone says they have mental health, before they think it was, we didn't really understand it. ADHD,
mm,
for me, back when I was in school, they didn't understand it. They thought throw a pill at them or something like that. That'll
yeah.
fix them. Mental health, they consider ADHD, you were basically special, you were retarded. And it's weird now because now we're looking at it like, no, it's just a disorder. It's a little bit of a kind of a roadblock.
Well, I actually think it's talking about ADHD. It's just the brain is wired differently, but it isn't necessarily a bad thing.
It's not.
Because people with ADHD are very creative. They jump all around the place. There's certain things you wouldn't want them to do, but there's certain things that actually really they get bored easily. But the certain jobs are absolutely ideal for. So I would say to somebody who's got ADHD,
Hey, I found my burden and curse with it. My curse is I never get any sleep. I have insomnia from it.
mm,
But with that time I don't sleep, I'm podcasting at 1:00 in the morning, my time, with
yeah,
someone in UK or Australia where it's the middle of the day, their time. I'm interacting with more people because I'm using it into my benefit. Instead of being lazy and sitting on
that's
my
true.
phone at
It's
1:00
true.
in the morning, I'm using it. And it's funny because I only need an hour or 2 hours and I'm good for the day.
Yeah, I need a bit more sleep than that. But the other thing that we see a lot of is autism, and that's the way people's brains are wired. And actually, people with that kind of brain make really good mathematicians, for one thing.
Yeah, it's called idiot savant syndrome.
But they're just, they're fantastic. So just because society says this type of brain, if you're that type of person, then we're going to say you've got a disorder. But it's not a disorder. It's just a different version of humanity, and it's got its place. Talking about things like that, you talk about like psychopaths or sociopaths, I think you call them in the States, and we're scared of them because they don't have emotions and they can be very cold and very they don't really care about other people's feelings.
Their brain's wired differently.
Yeah, they are wired differently. They know other people have emotions, but they don't feel them themselves. So they can, if they're clever, they learn to mimic them. Now that doesn't sound very good, but when they've done tests, they don't feel fear particularly. So if you want a firefighter to go into a burning building, a psychopath is the best person to do that, because a surgeon, he's not going to lose his shit when things go wrong. He's going to keep on top of it, or she. So every kind of person, there is a use for, or else I guess they wouldn't have evolved. So yeah, I feel strongly about that, because people get labeled. You're not good at this, you can't do this, but you're good at that. So people who aren't academic can build houses, people. And funnily enough, we value certain skills more than others. So we value thinking, people who can think analytically. We value kind of sporty people who are athletic. But what about people who care? Because obviously I work in the health profession, so it's female dominated. And the typically female, I don't want to kind of stereotype things, but caring and compassion and empathy.
Well, it's a nature versus nurture aspect. We have it's not a dominant characteristic in men to be empathic, which is having a kind of emotional awareness of everyone else's emotions, kind of like sensing somebody's energy. For a guy that's able to be sensitive is seen as, you're sensitive. Like, it's a weird thing if you're a guy, but that's where you find a lot of male nurses. That's where you find, male therapists, because they have a different sense than what the common norm for a man is. A woman doing a dominant alpha male position, such as, taking like a leadership role or something like that. It's like, it's a little bit weird, but those are old forms of thinking.
Yeah. What about that woman who was the physicist, and she discovered, she took the photo of the black hole, and they give her a really hard time, and partly because, why can't she be a physicist? And the same thing is, why can't a man do a caring role? Things are changing though, I think.
it's weird because we talk about male and female jobs, and it's like I know females who are lawyers in Jamaica, especially one of them. Shout out to her. She was talking about how hard it is because people look at her, her gender, because she's sitting at a boardroom with people that are 20 years older than her in a law firm, and nobody's listening to her ideas, even though they're good ideas, because she's young and she's a woman.
Yeah.
And that's a completely wrong way of thinking. You need to start analyzing people. Like, all right, let's say if I own a business, you own a business, okay? You get 2 resumes in front of you. On one of the resumes, it says this guy is going to make you $50,000 more for your company, and the other one says he's not going to make you as much and he's not going to be as productive. You look at both of those resumes. If you find out the one dude that's going to make you $50,000 more is a female or is black or a different race or something, are you not going to hire them? Are you going to deny yourself that money?
It makes no sense, does it? You'd hire them, yeah.
But people still think in that mindset. And it's like, how underdeveloped is your brain to the point you can't rationalize that we're all people experiencing this world together?
Another thing, of course, which has come up at the moment, and I haven't seen it so much until recently, over the past few years, is kind of gender identity and gender fluidity. And seeing young people who identify as another gender, and you kind of go into it thinking, is this real? Is this what's going on here? But having worked with them, I'm absolutely convinced it is.
I am. Hey, I talked to a transgender person I went to college with. She did my podcast. It's a he did my podcast. And the way he related it to was, imagine looking in the mirror and not liking what you see, feeling like this is a wrong image. You don't like anything about yourself. And I could relate to that because I was body dysmorphic. So I was like, I understand that. And I completely understand it. But I think nowadays it's becoming it's getting a lot more popular, and it's becoming a trend kind of. You're seeing kids at a young age, 12 years old, 5 years old, 7 years old, that are getting hormone replacement therapy, and their parents are going full on into it. It's like, hold on a second.
Yeah, I worry about that. Yeah, I do. I think when you're an adult and when or when you're an adolescent and you can make your own decisions. But when you're very young, these are kids that we wouldn't let them vote. We wouldn't let them join the army. We wouldn't let them drive a car.
They don't know what they want yet, because when you're a kid, you're what you want, and what is desperate in your life completely changes all the time. You don't get a Digimon toy, you don't get a hat, you don't get some slippers, you don't get a good Christmas present, you don't get a bike. All that shit affects your life so dramatically. But when you get older, your values change on things. Your mind is more developed because it starts to understand what's more important: paying the bills, living a life, eating food, making sure you have money to get food. This is all survivability. But back, when they're that young, their grasp on everything is completely misunderstood.
You actually remind me there, when my kids were a bit younger, they loved Sims. Sims came out and they loved playing. And I'm like, why would I want to play a game where I have to pay the bills, take the trash out, go to work? I do that anyway.
I love that game because it taught me so many things. It taught me this is what happens.
This is true.
I have to shit and then shower, not shower then shit.
Get it the right way around, yeah.
And then it was like, but I think that one gives me the best realization of the social skill. So there's a social skill in Sims.
Yeah, because you could make friends, couldn't you? And if you did it the wrong way, you didn't have any friends.
You made enemies. But you see, if you made a Sim that lived by himself, like I did, I was like, I'm just gonna, build up my own house, live by myself. Don't have to live by any rules. My Sim social skill went down. It goes down slower than the rest, but all the other skills, they decrease at a faster rate because they're more important. This is when I learned, after being introvert for 3 years out of high school, that we all need to communicate on a daily basis, whether it's negative or whether it's positive. We need that interaction with people. You could be a hermit for so long, but after a while, someone talks to you, it feels like a hug for your soul. But now we have social media that gives us that false hug. It gives us that, hey, somebody's listening, somebody cares out there, when they don't really give a shit.
Although after saying that, I wonder if some people who are very socially isolated, if social media is a way for them to make a connection, to reach out and connect with other people.
I know so many people that are completely introverts, but they're on social media all the time, liking a picture, putting up a picture of like a sunset, never a picture of themselves because they don't want to get their image out there. But people like it. This is where you see social influencers, people that don't want to associate with actual people, but do it through an online form. You look for it somewhere else, you know?
Yeah.
Toilet's broken upstairs, you look for the next toilet downstairs. You know what I mean? You're looking for another way to get that need fulfilled. You can live a while without talking to people, but eventually you're going to need some interaction, whether it's good or bad. When you don't have conflict in your everyday life, you look for it somewhere else. This is when reality television played a big thing because it gave people that conflict. Even though it wasn't affecting them, it was giving them that stimulus. You're seeing two people argue on television. It's like you're seeing a false kind of conflict going on. It might have been created. I think that's why reality television always has that same kind of style.
Yeah, it's over the top, isn't it? It's manufactured, really. But you know, we're social animals, aren't we? We exist in packs. That's why we like dogs and horses. I guess sheep as well, because we get on with them. Whereas cats, I like cats, but cats don't really need us, you know. Cats are not social animals, whereas, you know, dogs, they love us. They want to come and see us.
Well, dogs rely on us too. Cats can be
do.
self-sustaining. You know, a cat can live outside. There can be wild feral cats. But a dog, you know, if you don't come home for a week and you just leave him in the house, he's dead. He's not able to affect or, you know, do anything. It's crazy.
I got a story about that. There was a guy I used to work with who was a policeman in Hong Kong. And he said that they had this big strike there and all the public servants, all the government workers went on strike. And they went on for a long time. And so what it ended up, he was in the police. So he said they went around a lot of houses and people had died inevitably in this period and nobody come and collected them. Nobody knew. So they were finding all these bodies. And he said, whether it's true or not, that the dogs had died, starved to death alongside their poor dead masters, and the cats had actually eaten them. So,
because
there you go.
Cats do not give a shit about you. They show love, sure, but it's more like, oh, you're here, you might as well pet me. That whole thing, you know, it's crazy because the first thing when someone dies, like of an elderly age, I remember when my great-grandfather passed away, he bought a 6-month-old dog a month before he died. And we're like, he's 94 years old. Where's that dog going? Like when he dies. And immediately we when we didn't hear back from him for a while, we found out he passed away. We're like, someone needs to go and check on his dog. Like someone needs to figure out where that dog's going because that dog it can't sustain itself. There's no way. A cat, you can be like, you know, I know so many people that move and just leave their cat at the house. Next thing you know, there's a bunch of feral cats on the street because they're able to hunt. They're able to do things for themselves. A dog can't live on the street for long.
No, that's right. They die. But then, of course, in some places you get feral packs of dogs, don't you?
Yeah, but they're barely living. They end up dying after 6 months because their bones are ripping through their skin or they have mange or some disease.
There's nothing for them to eat. Yeah.
They just can't function well. But that's the weirdest thing is because the most popular animal is a dog because it's so reliable and so trusting. I mean, it greets you at the door. It relies on you to feed it and take care of it and bathe it and give it affection. It's constantly at your side because it relies on you so much. But a cat, you don't really see a lot of them in the SPCA. You don't see a lot of them at animal shelters.
That's true. I never thought of that. That's true. Yeah. It all comes down to what we were saying before about people. Everybody wants to be loved, and your dog will give you love. You know?
Look at animals can develop mental illness as well.
We had a Boston Terrier when I was a kid, and that was a very strange dog.
Dude, they get weird imprinting things from when they're a puppy. I remember I had a dog died a couple of years ago, but she was an inbred. So we got her from this breeder that we didn't know they were breeding brother and sister and doing all these things. And it was a terrible, you know, we knew she wasn't going to live long. She lived till about 14, pretty long for what we expected. But from a young age, there was just a weird thing about her. She hated little kids. She couldn't stand, you know, she just couldn't stand little kids. But her eyes, they had like, you know, when you take a picture of somebody and their eyes are red.
Yeah.
Her eyes were like that all the time. And she had severe cataracts at like a young age. But she would, fucking most scariest part of my whole entire life, and I still get scared about now, even though she's gone, is when I used to step off. I used to sleep on the couch like for a couple summers, and she would sleep under the couch.
Yeah.
And whenever I put my feet down, all you hear is, I'm like, oh, so I'd be afraid to jump off the couch. So now when I step off, like to wake up in the morning, I'll step out of bed and I feel like my heels pick up real fast. Like she's going to bite me in the back of the heel.
But she's not even there now.
No.
And
it's
you've got PTSD.
I fucking got PTSD.
Yeah.
That happens though. Like people develop PTSD, where they can't hear alarms and things, but dogs can develop PTSD too.
I guess that's right, because our basic nervous system is very similar, isn't it? We may have a more developed brain, but all the spinal cord and stuff is pretty much the same.
It's crazy because, like, her name was Rio. My dad named her after the song. Her name is Rio.
Duran,
yeah. Well, it's funny because I think she had PTSD as well because she hated to be picked up. You would go, my dad said, he tells me this. He goes, when we found her, it was a bunch of her brothers and sisters stepping on her head. She was the smallest of the bunch, just at the bottom, all squished into this small ass box. Like they were fitting 20 puppies in a box that could probably only hold 5. And so my dad moved all the other dogs out of the way and picked her up and immediately put her on his shoulder. And then afterwards we went to Walmart and got a bunch of things for her. But me and my dad sat in the car while my mom went inside to go buy everything. And the whole time she sat there looking through my dad's beard. It wasn't much of a beard. It was a little bit of a goatee, but sat there just sniffing through it the whole time. Then for the rest of her life, for the next 14 years, whenever my dad would sit on the couch, she would jump right on the couch, go right up to his beard and start sniffing through it, just like she was a little puppy. It was an imprinted moment.
Yeah.
But the only person that could touch her was my dad. I remember she got older. She became more trusting into me. I remember sitting on the couch and she would lay on top of me. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck to do. My dad's like, pet her. She's 12 years old. If she bites you, she has no teeth left. So it's not going to hurt. She's going to gum you to death. And I'm like, I would go to pet her and then you start to see warm up to me. And eventually she passed away. I was like, why did it take that fucking long?
12 years. Yeah.
But it's like, it's crazy because they have these bonding moments and these experiences that people can get. And that's why there's emotional support animals as well. There's only one animal in I don't want to say that in the world, but there's one animal that can really level with your mind and have a communication with your mind to the point where if you're not thinking clearly, it will not ride correctly. And you know what that animal is?
No, go on. No.
It's a horse.
A horse, yeah.
If you try and get on a horse and your mind is not clear and connected with that horse, it will not ride right. It can't function.
Yeah. The only time I've ever been on a horse, I think I've been on one twice, and it just wanted to eat grass all the time. So and I couldn't make it do anything. It just kind of wandered where it wanted.
You have to be literally, it's like the movie Avatar where they take the fucking ponytail and stick it onto the fucking other thing. And the next thing you know, they're connected. Like I am with you. That's what it is. A horse, literally, if you're thinking all clouded, if you're upset, if you're angry, the horse will start being angry. It'll start being upset. And this is what people can do too. People can give off an emotional energy, a type of connection, a type of hurting, and it creates something into the other person. A conflict can create more aggression. Being happy, being in a good mood can create a better household, a better energy in the family.
I mean, what we do all the time, every day, all of us, we try to get people to help us out and do things for us. And we've got different styles of doing it. Some people are very charming. They make you like them and you do things for them. Some people are intimidating. You're scared of them so they try and get people and it works. And other people try and make you feel sorry for them and they make you anxious about them. But everybody's got a style and we all put emotions into other people. Talk about ghosts. My door's just come open on its own.
That's maybe it's the wind.
It probably is the wind. To be honest,
don't give me that X-Files shit where I watch it for 45 minutes and they don't find anything.
I've just seen it. It just came open just then.
It's crazy because we look at horror movies, we look at mental health, we look at things, but it's all a deep connected thing into emotion. I remember reading so many countless scary stories and all these things that literally sparked fear in me. If I had to ask you, what is your all-time favorite story or scary story, ghost story, whatever you want to say, what would you say it would be?
I probably can't say one, but yeah, what scares you? So there's a story called The Room in the Tower by E.F. Benson. And this is about a guy who has this recurring dream. And then he goes through his life after many years and he finds himself in the place from his dream. And the people are there from his dream and they say the things in his dream and they put him in this room in the tower. And then something awful happens. And funnily enough, you know, we are talking about ghosts. I used to do ghost tours and ghost hunts, which I haven't done for a bit. And I remember having somebody come and people would tell you all the stories like this. They would tell you all the stories of things that happened to them. And this particular, she was about 35 then. And she said she'd been having this dream maybe once a year about her school. And she, in the dream, all the kids are in the class and she's very little in the class. And something comes, this monster comes, and she never sees it because it's the door opens and then the kid goes and she sees the teacher. The teachers are in this other room looking through glass, watching as the kids are taken and they just disappear. And she said to me that she'd lost track of these other kids in the class with her. She'd moved away, but she thinks some of them had actually died. And as the years went by, I don't know if she was making this up, but I think she was being honest. There was less and less, fewer and fewer kids. And one of these days, obviously, it's going to be her turn. And whatever it is that's in the dream coming to get her is going to take her. And so that was a scary one. And I actually wrote a ghost story about that based on that. But yeah, that was scary. I tell you, yeah, go on.
I think when I became really kind of known to ghost stories, obviously you get the ones by the campfire, like, oh, there was a power outage and then Facebook was down. Oh, you're like, holy shit. But I remember going to theaters as a kid and not really understanding what I was seeing. But I remember I started to be kind of more interested into it when I got older, more in high school. I used to watch like theater acts, like dramas, like, you know, you see Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
But one of my favorites that turned into a movie, which I really, really enjoyed, but a lot of people didn't like it, The Monkey's Paw.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm glad you said that because our latest episode is a Telltale Heart.
I know, that's why I kind of hinted at it.
Ah, very good, very good. You fed that in. So I get to do my American accent in that, so you can I don't even want any comments on that.
What is your American accent?
I'm not gonna do it now, but you have to listen to the Telltale Heart and see what you think. Now,
but I totally forgot you're from the UK. I forgot to ask my question I always ask people from the UK and Australia. Why do you drive on the wrong side of the road?
Well, I don't know who started it. We like to think we probably started it, you know, but I don't know if that's true. Who was driving first?
We did the wrong way. It's funny.
No, everybody in Europe, they drive in the same side as you. Nearly everybody does, apart from us. It's us in Britain, the Irish, Malta, Cyprus. Is it Australia?
Australia, India, China.
Yeah, India as well. Yeah, India does. I don't know what China does. You might be right. I don't know.
It's funny because every time I say something, when I ask somebody where they're from, they say Australia or UK or something, I always go, so why do you drive on the wrong side of the road? They're like, mate, you drive on the wrong side of the road.
You're going to say it like that. Yeah, all right, mate. Yeah. So, no, I've done the Monkey's Paw as well, of course. Yeah, that's another episode that we did.
It's crazy because the monkey's paw is the different aspect of getting 3 wishes from a genie.
Yeah, very much.
You get a little paw from a shop or some type of weird kind of possessed or kind of enchanted item, and you get 3 wishes with it.
I imagine there's loads of those in New Orleans, which is a place I've never been, but I want to go to just to get a monkey's paw.
Well, it's crazy because like whenever you would wish something, like I wish my, he would like, I wish we had more money. I wish, we had this to pay off this. Next thing you know, the brother loses his arm in a factory.
Yeah, you get it, but there's bad shit. So
it's not the way you wanted it.
Yeah, that's right. But that's really old, isn't it? That's like Aladdin as well. You know, these genies and things, they're trying to outwit you. Don't trust them.
It's always
they'll give you a wish, but
they're a fucking lawyer. That's what it is.
Yeah, you've even got Mephistopheles doing a deal with the devil. He'll get you he'll give you what you say you want. Then it turns out you didn't really want it anyway.
But the deal always goes sour.
Absolutely. What was that? Did you ever see a great film called Angel Heart with Mickey Rooney? It's quite old now.
I think I've seen it.
Yeah, that was scary. Yeah, that was scary. because you realize who he is before he realizes who he is, and you can see it coming, and it just dawns on him slowly, and you're going, oh man, we can see where this is going.
I think it's like the Sixth Sense too, like the Sixth Sense where he realizes he's a ghost.
That was a good twist.
You're
because
like, holy shit!
Yeah, first time you see it, it's like Blair Witch as well, isn't it? The first time they do these things, they're really powerful, and then you've done them and you know what they are. So I remember seeing Blair Witch when it first came out, and people thought the first Blair Witch. I thought the second Blair Witch was actually quite scary as well, but the first Blair Witch, people thought, oh, this is a real thing from near you. Would it be? It was filmed in Maryland, wasn't it? Somewhere near there.
I think so.
Yeah. Anyway, so don't go into the woods there, and then. Yeah, that was very scary. And then I don't know if you've seen a film called The Ritual, where these guys go camping and hiking in a big Norwegian forest, and they get lost in this massive forest, and they come across people who've been there for a lot. This is the folk horror thing. People have been there, these strange communities that are worshipping ancient gods in a very nasty way, obviously. And Midsummer as well has just been out as well. That's a similar thing.
It's funny because have you ever heard of, in Japan, there's a thing called Suicide Woods?
Do you know? Yeah, I have, because I read a book. Was it Murakami wrote a book where they go to Suicide Woods?
They talk about like that's a haunted place, seeing bodies and things of this sort, and you're not allowed to film, you're not allowed to do anything because of how scary it is. And I'm like, does it bring into a rationalization of that depression or any of these types of things anywhere?
The thing about Suicide Woods, I understand it's become a bit of a tourist attraction, which is kind of very ghoulish and awful, really.
I think a lot of people say they don't understand it, and they say, what's wrong with you? It's in your head. That's the fucking problem.
Yeah,
and the thing is nobody's free. Nobody, you can develop it later in life. You could randomly, Roseanne Barr suffers from like depression and multiple personality syndrome because she got hit by a car.
Yeah.
Her brain just flipped into a different way. You can develop anxiety. You can develop depression later in life if you're constantly being around negative influences.
Yeah.
That's how you create a fucking horror story, is by twisting someone's mind and making them perceive something. I mean, it goes hand in hand.
The psychological horror. What do they call it? Gaslighting, where somebody convinces you that you're crazy, and they just twist your reality. And that's a thing. And people do that. Yeah.
Some Shawshank Redemption shit. I mean, how many times do you see like a horror movie or something where the person goes, "What are you talking about? You're crazy," and they're lying the whole time, but eventually you start believing it.
Yeah.
You're like, maybe I am crazy. And then really you find out they're lying. And you're like, holy shit. Like, have you ever seen the movie, or not movie, TV show? It's called Ash versus Evil Dead. It's on Netflix.
No, I haven't seen that.
Well, he's getting into a fight with a demon, and like, the demon is dressed up as his dad and everything, and like kind of shapeshifts into his dad. And he's fighting the demon. Like, I know you're just a trick. Then he actually, like, his dad actually walks in, and he starts attacking his own dad and kills his own dad. And then the demon's up behind him. And he's like, holy shit, because it percepted his mind in such a way. And eventually they put him in an insane asylum to the point where he thinks his whole life is a lie and everything. And he's like trying not to fall into it. It's like, that's what scares the shit out of me. Someone tricking yourself into believing. Like, people do that to get out of lie detector tests. There are people that believe something so full on that they can literally lie to themselves to believe the truth.
Because they believe it's true. Yeah, they come to believe it's true, even though they started off knowing it was a lie.
What is one of your kind of favorite, like, kind of, I guess, fictional or folkloric monsters, from an old classic tale?
Oh, monsters. I'll tell you what, we haven't mentioned Call of Cthulhu and things like that, have we? It would probably be some of those Lovecraftian monsters where they're big, like the Shoggoth. It's a big heap of goo and tentacles come out. There's always tentacles in Lovecraft. They come out of it, It's probably something like that.
I think what's fascinating about old folkloric monsters is that how they are basically so relatable to people, on just the inner ambitions. Let's talk about the werewolf, okay? So werewolf,
I love a werewolf, yeah.
Turning into a beast, having this dark side, this monstrous, animalistic side to you. That's kind of seen in people nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, if you talk about those, a werewolf's good. I still love vampires. I was talking about earlier.
Vampires is the fascination with people and immortality. Everybody wants to live forever, but I say like it's what really put that into grasp in my head is when I saw The Last Witch Hunter with Vin Diesel.
Okay, yeah.
And he's sitting in the beginning with Elijah Wood, and they're just talking. He's like, it must be so fascinating living all this like long years and having this long life. And he goes, I've seen the streets before it was built how it is now. I've seen the blood, just cities built on bodies. And he's like, he's remorseful. He doesn't want to be eternal anymore because he's tired of it. He's seen it. He's been around. He's watched people love and die. And that's why I say I never want to live forever, because you would get so bored with it.
Yeah, I think you would get bored with it. Everything. Because, when you've done a thing 10 times, it's not as good. You don't want to. It's always the first couple of times.
It only lasts like 500 years. And eventually Dracula's like, I just want to meet the person that conquers me.
Yeah. There's, funny enough about these folkloric monsters, there's still, I remember talking to old people who are all dead now, but who still believed in them, still believed in the fairies and things. When I lived at one point in Wales, and there was a village there, and the old men believed up on the hills the fairies still gathered. They wouldn't go up there at certain times. So, there was still a belief, and people just laugh at that now, but who's to say they were wrong?
I think folklore is a form of storytelling, much like, the religions and things that are being told now. It's all about this mystery aspect to play into your mind, because I believe your mind always wants to have mystery involved into it. You want to spend your life finding the answers. Then once you find the answers, you still don't feel complete. You just wasted. You rather not know. I think more people are just happier not knowing, but we have that fascination with knowing. But once we find the answer, we're just like, oh man, I wish I didn't find out. I wish I could still have something.
Move on to the next thing. Yeah. What's the next mystery? Yeah.
And it's funny because I think two of my favorite monsters are probably Frankenstein.
Oh.
And just because being misjudged, mischaracterized.
Okay, I see that.
But being brought back and everyone kind of looking at you differently, and, everyone afraid of you, wanting to kill you, and not really. I think the movie Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman was it was probably the best version of Frankenstein, because all he wanted to do was help, and then they killed his dad, his scientist master, and did all these things. And then I think they kind of changed it up when Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe did the remake of it, which turned it into a different form. But it was like bringing something back from the dead was pretty fascinating. Not like a zombie, but like a functional, super strong person. And then we look at in Van Helsing, like my favorite depiction of Jekyll and Hyde. A dude with a split personality that can turn into this angry monster and be a brute of a man, and then also can go back to a human form.
But that's like the werewolf as well, isn't it? The beast within.
Exactly. See, this, when you start to look at folkloric monsters, I think what makes them so awesome and kind of mysterious is the fact that how they kind of have an inner side to them. Stan Lee talked about this when he developed the Incredible Hulk. He was talking about everyone has this side to them, this unleashing berserker, this bursting kind of, anger. That's what the Hulk really represented. But they have the understanding, compassionate side, which was Bruce Banner. It's about being misplaced and misjudged.
Do you know, they say that you can understand your own story, your own life as a myth. So for some people, it might be Frankenstein, and for some people, it'll be some other kind of story, because these folklore stories, they're archetypal, and we see them again and again and again, and we tend to we can live our lives. And it's interesting to think about: are you Cinderella? Are you the lost boy? Are you Pinocchio? Are you the werewolf? Are you the Hulk? And even as you've just said, the Hulk's a retelling in a way of a Frankenstein, of a werewolf monster, about the beast within. So these stories keep getting repeated right down human history. And which one are we playing? I don't know.
Have you seen the dark story of the real Disney stories, like the Disney princess stories? I think it's by the Brothers Grimm or something.
Oh yeah. Well, they were some of those.
They were fucking brutal, dude.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh my God, when the sisters in Cinderella were trying to fit into the glass slipper, and they were literally like cutting their feet to fit it
Yeah.
into the glass. Oh my! And then with the Little Mermaid, where she ended up she could never return back to sea, but every time she would walk on her legs, it felt like somebody stabbing her constantly, so
Yeah.
she was in pain. And the prince found out or left love for somebody else, so then she ended up jumping back into the ocean and turning into sea foam. It's crazy, those concepts. I mean, I think we all know the story of Hansel and Gretel and everything,
Yep.
but when you start looking at them like through that version of it, it's like, whoa, it puts things in a way darker, like more adult scenario.
See, that witch is going to eat them. That witch is a cannibal, She wants to cook them and eat them. That's not nice.
And they push her into an oven.
Yeah, they push her into an oven. Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Nobody
you can argue
brings
she
that up.
deserved it, man. But
If that was society today, wouldn't they get murder charges?
could you argue self-defense?
That's like,
probably not.
That's even though now, even if you do something like self-defense, if someone dies, someone's got to get booked for something.
Yeah. You're pushing them into an oven. They might argue that was not reasonable force.
I would have been like, yo, first of all, she tried to bake me into a pie.
Yeah, that's right. I think that calls for a lot of self-defense, really. Yeah, but so they are dark. They are absolutely dark. But the story, they're important, these things. And you going back to what we were saying at the very beginning about one of the things that struck me is seeing how hard it is to grow up. And I think once you've grown up, you forget how difficult that transition from living where people take care of you and everybody protects you, or is supposed to anyway. And then suddenly when you become 18, certainly under our law, that's it. You're an adult and you've got to look after yourself. And it's a massive change. And people struggle with it. And a lot of them, part of the issue is they just don't want to go into adulthood. They just want to stay being looked after.
Well, we live in a world that's based on suppression. When you become an adult, you can't do kid-like things anymore. But now we're seeing, nowadays, like, enjoying a video game or something. Adults play video games now.
They do. They do.
It's turning into what our identification for what is a gender or what is a age thing is no longer being dominant anymore nowadays. It's seeing like, my grandparents, they're acting like kids. They're drawing, they're playing with blocks, just to be able to talk to my younger nephews or something, something they're all doing. But they have an inner kid inside of them that wasn't expressed back in their day. When they became an adult, they had to man up and take care of the house
and be serious. Yeah, because that's the thing about coloring books, wasn't it? A couple of years ago, they were everywhere, and people of every age were doing books like 3-year-olds used to do. But yeah, people do things. I'm not playing any video games at the moment because I know how much they take over my life. So I'm avoiding them because it means I get a lot more stuff done.
Yeah, you want to be productive, not fall.
Yeah, just because I can sit there and waste 12 hours go, and you think, oh my god.
Yeah, you're playing for like 10 minutes. You look and it's like the next day. You're like, holy shit, I didn't even get sleep. Like, what happened?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's all the capacity of being able to captivate our minds into something. I mean, it's the same thing like you're reading a ghost story or, you're reading a good book or watching a movie. Mm-hmm. Like it just goes, time just goes away. That's why people want it so much because they feel like, I feel like now that I'm getting older, the days are going by a hell of a lot faster. Like we're already at the end of October. Like
it just keeps going faster and faster, believe me.
Yeah. And then I'm like, fuck, like what's the next thing I know, I'm going to blink and be 40.
Absolutely. Then you'd be 80. Yeah. Yeah, no, it goes fast. Yeah. But that's all right. I can't think what I was going to say. Yeah. Having these mental blanks now. Oh yeah. ADHD. How come kids with ADHD can sit and play computer games and, video games endlessly? It's because they're all lots of little different subtasks and things to do within the game. So although it's the same game, you're doing a whole bunch of different things. So that's how they can do it.
Well, man, I really appreciate you doing the podcast, Tony. It was awesome talking to you.
It's been fun. Yeah, it's been good.
I know it was a little bit of different conversation, I guess, than you originally thought. You thought I was just going to talk to you about your podcast, but it seems like we branched it all together. I want to give you here a minute at the end, though, to kind of promote your content, man. Because I want people to find this stuff and hear your storytelling.
So basically, what it is I was just saying, it's a retelling of classic ghost and horror and weird stories. That you probably, actually, you maybe haven't heard them before, but some of them you will have heard before. And each week really is an episode, and each episode is a separate story. And it starts off, I just launch right into this story. I don't debate it or anything. And at the end, I kind of talk about what I think about the story. But if all you want to do is listen to the story, just don't listen to me. So yeah, and it's just called simply Classic Ghost Stories Podcast. That's it. And I'm Tony Walker. And yeah, if you wanted to pick that up, that would be great.
Can I recommend a story you should do?
Go on.
The Raven.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the story about me doing Telltale Heart was because it's quite short. So I'd done this really long story, about an hour or so, by a guy called Robert Aikman. I've got his name wrong now. And he's very, very, very English. And as I'm reading it, I'm thinking, this is too English, But it turned out that it didn't record. It only recorded the first 10 minutes. And I was sitting talking to myself for an hour. And then I thought, well, I need another story. And so I went from this very understated, very, I don't know what you call it, to this massively dramatic Edgar Allan Poe, but the Poe was better. I enjoyed that a lot more.
Do you find that like literature through its form, like do you find it better in a demeanor like that? I always found a fascination with William Shakespeare and Edgar Allan Poe on the basis of like when he's doing the Telltale Heart and then he's talking about digging up like the floorboard and hearing the pulsating heart of the person he killed. Yeah. Like just reading that is better than any horror movie, I think, nowadays, just because I remember seeing it in a theater act and I was like, oh, like, what's that rasping on my chamber door, that whole talk. Like, I love that style of like,
it's good.
Depicting and using such detail, like described characteristics, because it creates imagery in your mind, which is on the basis of poetry.
Yeah, absolutely. Poe's really over the top, but his language is so elaborate and over dramatic, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And, we want to be entertained, and that's what it's all about.
For sure, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you doing this episode of Out of the Blank. I mean, I know it's probably like 11 o'clock there, but hey, you stayed up with me. We talked about mental health. We talked about ghost stories and enough to spook the people out on something.
Okay. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was great.